Hello, everyone. Welcome to the One Ball Between Us podcast. I am your host, Stubbs, and this is my co-host here, Cipher.
Hello.
Welcome on in, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day. So, people are probably wondering about the name, which is something that we came up with together on kind of on the fly, really. It was just sort of like hey, we kind of need to come up with a name for this podcast, and we kind of already had a name in mind. One of our good friends, Bravo, actually helped us came up with a name, but then we decided in DMs just to randomly go like, hey, why don't we go with this name? And I don't know if you want to explain, Cypher, as to why we have this name.
I mean, it's mainly because that is the anatomy of both of us, how it adds up to. You have no ball, I have one ball.
Exactly.
There we go.
It just works. It just works.
It's the perfect middle ground.
It really is. So, we are going to be exploring a very interesting topic today for our first ever episode. We are doing sexuality, which is a very interesting and sort of broad topic to start with our first episode.
There's a lot we can broach on.
Absolutely, but we are going to sort of try and minimize this down to about like an hour. We're going to go for like an hour for the podcast, and then we're going to see how it sort of goes. It is our first ever podcast, so there is going to be a couple of us like going a bit anxiety sort of way, so like I get a bit anxious, Cypher's a bit anxious, we both have mental health problems, we are both two disabled VTubers, and this content within the podcast is going to be very adult focused from now on, so if that isn't your cup of tea, that's absolutely fine, not a problem. Feel free to unlisten, I don't know, take your ears back or whatever. So
yeah, let's do that.
I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes you could just take your ears off, right? I mean, at least I can as a zombie. I don't know how you do it as like an eldritch being or anything like that.
If I was to tell you, the world would end, so we won't broach that subject.
Okay. Duly noted. Okay. Right. So, sexuality is, there are many, like, different definitions for it, per se. Like, it's kind of, something that sort of everyone understands, is different from gender, or at least you should know the difference anyway. But for Google's sake, sexuality is defined by your sexuality or sexual orientation is basically a way to describe the feelings you have for someone you fancy or are attracted to. And just for our younger listeners who like using Urban Dictionary, sexuality is just one of those things you are born with. You do not choose it, it's just a part of who you are, whether you be physically, emotionally, and sexually attracted to males, females, or even both. Again, that definition doesn't actually include non-binaries. That might be a very it's done in 2006. Okay, yeah. I will forgive the person that wrote this for not putting anything about non-binary. Because like in 2006, I feel like a lot of people didn't really obviously non-binary has been around forever, but like it's more nowadays that like a lot of people know more about like non-binary and how gender as a whole is a spectrum. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting description of it. But yeah, so we're gonna kind of like talk about sort of our experiences with sexuality more than anything, because at least for the both of us, we are in the LGBTQIA plus community, or as people like to call it, the alphabet mafia. Which honestly is
that.
It's a really badass name, which I really like.
I really like that name, but I think the good thing about both of us talking about our own experiences is the fact that it's actually only been quite recently until we clicked and it was like, oh wait, that does actually fit. That does feel like who I am. I am.
I was about to say, like, actually very recently, of like I think last year, we both sort of met through Twitch and sort of on Twitter as well, and I think we both sort of helped each other in that regard to sort of realize who we truly were. Like, you kind of like, at least from when I met you, you identified as bisexual, and I suppose now's obviously a good time to sort of take your experiences first, really, because I think you kind of discovered more who you were before I did, really. So, I mean, if you want to talk about that first, the floor is all yours.
I'm more than happy to. So, when me discovering my sexuality, that I'd say I was curious about things, for lack of a better word, when I was in high school.
Yeah.
That's when I realised I was attracted to male presenting people.
Yeah.
Probably around the same level as I was to female presenting.
Of course, yeah.
So with that, I carried on going through my life at high school, college, and work, and my first year of uni or so, believing that I was bisexual. And then after being exposed to more of the, the sexualities.
Yeah. Like the spectrum of sexualities, basically.
Yeah, thank you. I realised, wait, okay, so pansexual means you are literally just have an attraction to a person. Be it they male, female, non-binary, transgender, it doesn't matter. You're attracted to someone. And then I was like, yeah, that actually makes more sense to me. I would have no problem being in a relationship with anyone. If I feel an attraction, if I feel a connection with someone, I would end up in a relationship with them.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So that is my experience, and I will pass it back to you.
Yeah, of course. So for me, for most of my life, I'd say I grew up in a very, I don't know how to describe it really, but the area I sort of grew up in, sexuality wasn't really sort of discussed, or at least everyone was really good at hiding it. Like, I never really grew up with people around me that sort of talked about their sexuality, and for most of my life, I believed I was straight. I like men. I've always liked men, always have done since I was younger, and up until now as well. It wasn't until actually talking with like yourself and also some other people that I realized that because of and again bringing in like non-binary into it and that I realized that I actually have like an attraction to not just men but like masculine people in general, so that's including people that are non-binary. So I never really like knew that there was anything like that, and not to say that there needs to be a term for how I feel as a person or anything like that, but it's a comforted feeling knowing that there are people out there that also have the same sort of like attraction as me, and that it's got a label to it, because then I can find people that are similar to me in tastes in that. So for me, I actually found out that my sexuality is called androsexual. So it's basically the attraction to men slash masculine people. So that includes like people that are non-binary who are more like masculine. So which I never heard of that. Apparently the opposite of that is like gynae sexual. So it's like attraction to like women and more feminine people. So but I never had heard anything like that before. So it took me talking to yourself and some other people as well that I discovered that it was a thing. And I've never felt better. I have genuinely never felt better in myself knowing that this is who I am as a person. And it very much allows me to explore my options as a person, really. So like my partner, he's great, he's absolutely fantastic with everything, and he's been like my rock through discovering who I am. And I think having him there and having like yourself and my other friends around has like really helped out with discovering who I am, and including my sexuality. So I think it's very important to have those like support networks around you. If you are thinking about it, like, at the end of the day, you might be completely secure in your sexuality and you know who you are, but if you're not, then, feel free to reach out to people who understand you and support you for you, you know? Because
Yeah,
you might just
exactly.
find that you've got people around you who are also questioning, and, you know, you can find who you are together, basically. Kind of what we did. We kind of found ourselves together, essentially. So that worked out really nice.
I wouldn't. Again, like you, I had no. I didn't really know pansexual was a thing. I literally thought it was gay, bisexual, lesbian.
Yeah,
That's what I
you've
thought.
kind of got like the main three that you kind of like hear about more than anything, really. So
Yeah, I mean that could have something to do with the growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s.
yes,
That was
I'd say so. Yes, yeah.
more what there wasn't much of a light shone on it. There wasn't much people talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that might have a lot to do with it. But thanks to talking to people and opening my mind, broadening my horizons, I realised I found out who I actually am as a person. Well, in regards to sexuality, that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah, we have many podcast episodes coming up soon that will delve into various different topics of ourselves. As we mentioned, we are both disabled VTubers, so you know, we've got various topics to talk about, including we'll end up probably doing one about disability and sort of like physical health in that regard, because we have that would probably be like a 3-hour episode at that point, maybe even longer. That was we do have a lot of to talk about that. But yeah, I think it's very it's like awesome that nowadays and strangely enough, like platforms like TikTok, I find a lot on TikTok that people are very, very open about discussing their sexuality, and a lot of people have actually like found themselves through platforms like TikTok and social media and that. And as much as people like to like shit on social media and say it's bad and it's poisoning our minds, woo, and all this sort of propaganda bullshit, it's actually really nice to have found myself and found the people that support me and have like-minded likes because of social media. Like we're both actually streamers, and we've sort of found our own communities and also come together as a community, with hopefully regarding to this podcast as well, but we should be able to hopefully find our wider audience in that. And it's just been so good to find people via social media, and I think that's definitely another topic we could delve into at some point. That
Definitely. I mean, there are negatives with social media and even sexuality in social media.
Yes,
there are certain sites that you wouldn't really, for lack of a better word, it's like a cesspool, and it's very, very closed, narrow-minded.
Of course,
set in their ways, thinking no, this sexuality is right. It's a choice. They choose to be this, and that's something I am extremely passionate about. Your sexuality is not a choice. You can't change it. You have no control over it. It is part of you. It is part of what makes you a person, what makes you an individual. There is never any shame in what sexuality, who you're attracted to, and people should feel happy and allowed to be who they are, be with who they want to be, without fear of persecution or for the places where they're going to jail just because you're married to a man, things like that. It gets me very angry, and I will
of course
calm myself down before.
I can feel your blood boiling from across the room here. Imagining we're in the same room right now, and actually we're just right across the internet. So it's basically the same room. I mean, it's we've technically put ourselves in a Discord call that's called the stream room, so technically we're in a room, so it kind of works out in that regard. But no, I think that's you brought up a really important point there, well, several in fact actually, but in regards to some being popular than others, which is really interesting because like originally you thought that you were bisexual, and I think that especially with bisexuality and stuff like that, from what I've seen on like the internet and stuff like that, people can get very choosy with how they treat people that are bisexual. I definitely noticed that if, say, for example, myself as a woman, I identify as a cis woman, and that if I was to, and currently I'm actually dating a cis male, right? If I, for example, were bisexual and say like I had an attraction to women or non-binary, because the thing is with bisexuality as well, it's not just man or woman. It also does include non-binary, so you could be attracted to men and non-binary, but like not attracted to women. That's where the bi aspect comes into it, because it's two. I could like have people turn around to me and basically say like, no, you're just straight because you're dating a man as a woman. And bi-erasure is so scary in terms of like how prevalent it is on the internet. Like I hate talking about Twitter because we all know how Twitter's going at the moment and how it's fallen from grace, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. Not that it really had grace in the first place, but you know, it's one of those things where Twitter's a very, as you mentioned the word cesspool, I don't, cesspool I feels like quite harsh, but I get it. I 100% get it, because like if you're gonna place people within like a platform and sort of have them together and stuff like that, things are gonna get out of hand. And I feel like bi-erasure definitely happens way more on platforms like Twitter, or at least it's more vocal on Twitter. You don't really tend to see a lot of it IRL, or at least like I've never seen any of it at least in person. It very much is on social media, because social media is one of those things where you can be anonymous. You could absolutely post whatever the hell you want on social media. Eventually, it's going to bite you in the ass, because not everything on the internet is anonymous, sadly. Somehow it's going to always get back to you. But it's very much prevalent on Twitter that I noticed, like, bi-erasure. And I think it's just absolutely disgusting. 100% disgusting that people belittle sexuality like that. And it's...
so much.
Like, it doesn't matter who you're with as long as you're happy at the end of the day. Everything that we've said about like sexuality and that, the main key thing to come from all this is that you are happy in who you are, you know? Don't let anyone try to take away your identity or imply other things about yourself. As long as you are true to yourself, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Yeah.
Exactly. Also, for anyone who's wondering, bi-erasure is the tendency to ignore, remove, falsify, or re-explain evidence of bisexuality. Yes, I did get that description. It was not my own words, but hey ho, it helps.
No, you should have stuck with the idea that was completely your own words.
Yes. Okay. Fair. You know what? Fair.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Google definitioning. I mean, the beginning of this podcast, we had to bring up the definition because I feel like it's very important to ensure that we get terms correctly. And I will preface this by saying that with these podcasts and stuff like that, very much everything that we say is our opinion. It's it's our opinion. We can absolutely be wrong. We're human at the end of the day. I know we're VTubers and VTubers are stinky, but we are human at the end of the day, and we will absolutely make mistakes. So everything within these podcasts are our own opinions, and just sort of like things that we've sort of seen and stuff like that. So yeah, with the whole like bi-erasure stuff, that it's just stuff that I've seen on Twitter. I very much follow a lot of content creators that are bisexual, and yeah, I think it's just disgusting. I'll be honest.
At the end of the day, we can only go from our experiences and our point of view.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there are some things we might talk about that we might be slightly misinformed on, or anything like that. But we do try to learn about the subjects we're broaching, and each week before we go into it, like Stubbs said, we got the descriptions and everything, so we can go in fresh mind, know what we're talking about. And that actually, I did want to ask you, have you or do you feel comfortable speaking to your parents about your sexuality, about being androsexual?
Right. So that's kind of an interesting topic because like I don't know I don't think we've ever really talked about it at all, actually, because it's one of those things where I love my parents to bits. I think they're both wonderful people in their own regard and stuff like that. My mum more so because my mum, she's a bit younger than my dad. So my mum's a bit more like understanding. Like she's someone that I talk to like every day about like mental health and stuff like that. Whereas my dad's very, I mean, to put it in the best way, my dad's a conservative. No.
Right.
He, like, I always joke about, like, people being conservatives. At the end of the day, political stances, you take whatever political stance you want at the end of the day. But, like, I like to joke with my sister that, oh my god, my dad's a conservative, because he votes conservative every time. And I think it's just, like, an older generational thing, that he's just kind of always done that. But trying to talk to them about my sexuality has kind of just, I'll be perfectly honest, it's got to a point where I kind of just accept to them that I'm straight, because it's just easier than explaining what androsexual is. Like, the problem that I've had, and I've definitely faced this, like, online, people with, like, that are basically androsexual, from what I've gathered, people are basically just like, oh, you're straight, but with extra steps, essentially. That's...
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
that sounds about right.
Because obviously, or at least, like, if you are a female that is androsexual, at least, you know, you you kind of get that whole thing of, like, you're straight, but with extra steps. Like, it's like, oh, well, you like men, but then you also like non-binary people, so you're basically straight. And it's like, no, that's not, like, don't diminish how I feel like that. It's awful. At least that's what I've experienced on my end, and that's kind of how it's been with, like, my parents, is, like, trying to explain to them what androsexual is. They kind of just see it as, like, oh, well, I'm dating a guy, so I'm straight, you know?
Yeah.
It's
a bit... a bit sort of binary minded.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, ideally, yeah. Well, I'm not ideally. That's the wrong word, but yeah, basically, that is how it is. They are definitely like.
They see the three binaries.
Yes.
Gay, bisexual, straight.
Yeah, basically, they just see that, and they don't see that sexuality is a spectrum. So, you know, you're not always going to be, it's not always black and white. So, which, yeah, it's been difficult, but hopefully, you know, I'll be able to properly have the talk with them one day about it all, and hopefully get it explained to them. But in regards to how they are, sometimes it's just kind of easier to just accept that to them, I guess, which it's not great, and it's definitely something that I wish I could change about myself, is that I will back down very easily as a person. So it's definitely been like a difficult journey and stuff like that. But yeah, it's hopefully it's something that I can change. But
everything takes time.
Everything
takes time. Personally, for me, with my parents, I and I say this to a lot of people, I consider myself extremely lucky with my parents. They're very forward-thinking people. Never voted conservative.
Again, political stances aside, you can absolutely vote for whoever you want.
100%. But no, I've never felt ashamed or that I need to hide who I was. When I thought I was bi, for example, I did come out to my mum and dad, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. That you do you. We will still love you all the same." And then few years down the road, last year in fact, I remember I was in the car with my mum, and me and my mum, we end up going into big talks about everything. And sexuality came up, and I said to her, "Oh, I'm pansexual," and she was like, "Oh, okay, so what's that?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, I understand that. That's yeah." She was like, "That's actually a really lovely one. That you're not you love everyone the same." And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, mum, this is why I love you."
Oh.
But I, uh, I I'm unfortunately I'm one of the very lucky few
Yeah.
who actually have decent, accepting parents who wouldn't disown me or anything like that just
Yeah.
because who I am as a person.
Of course.
Unfortunately, there's not enough of that in the world.
Yeah.
People are born and they okay, the psychology hat's coming on now.
All right, yeah, I gotta edit at some point. Just me putting a I can't even say the word now. Psychology hat onto your head, and just make sure that we're teacher cipher mode.
it's, I it's I think a lot of it is that unfortunately the parents want to live vicariously through their children, so then they project this image of how their child should be, what they should like, and how they what sexuality they are, gay,
Yeah.
straight, all of it. So if they don't meet up to their standards, that's when rifts start to break. Why are they like this? Did I raise them wrong?
They have this idea in their head that it's like, this is how my child should be because this is how I've raised them, etc., etc. And then when they don't meet that standard, their whole world's shattered. Ideally,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's just it. Again, that goes back to the thing that there are still far too many people in the world who believe sexuality is a choice where it's not, and I honestly don't know what it would take to make people finally realize you cannot choose what your sexuality is. It's ingrained in you as your personality is, and no one can change their personality.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to note as well, you can't change your sexuality, but you will very much find out exactly what your sexuality is. You might, for example, for yourself, you started out thinking that you were bisexual, and then you discovered that you were actually pansexual. And it's not that you changed sexuality, it's just you not decided, again, stumbling over my words here. You discovered who you were as a person.
Yeah.
And like I say, you're not changing anything. It's just you're finding out who you actually are as a person. So it's don't ever be afraid to think that, oh, I think I'm straight and then I'm suddenly not and I'm something else or anything. Oh, so I'm changing, You're not changing anything. You are discovering who you are as a person, and it takes a lot of growth to finally figure out who you are as a person. And when you eventually get there, I bet it feels great. I say I bet it feels great because I still haven't figured out fully who I am yet as a person, and I think to be fair, a lot of us aren't there. I don't think a lot of us ever will be there, honestly. A lot of the time I think we are always going to be constantly discovering things about ourselves that we never really knew about, really. So
well, it's the you've got that saying that life is a journey, and it very much is. It's a journey that you're always learning about, and you're learning about yourself forever and everything you do. So it might feel like, well, why am I attracted to this people where my best friend isn't? Why am I like this? That's because you're learning. That's why you question it. That's why, when you're growing up, you question everything because you're learning. You're trying to understand why. And 9 times out of 10, No, scratch that. It is 100% because of who you are.
Yeah, 100%. You're always going to be constantly questioning things about yourself, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Don't ever feel afraid to not know the answer. Like, you know, it's as strange as it sounds, it's okay to not know the answer, because we're constantly growing, as you said, as a person, and you're not going to get the answers straight away. It took me, I'm 26, and it took me 26 years to figure out that androsexual was a thing, because you just never hear about it, because again, as we talked about before, there are definitely sexualities that are more forefront, and androsexual is definitely in the plus part of the alphabet mafia.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with everything going on in the world and how messed up it is difficult to feel that you actually have a place to belong or things like that. But people have to remember you're not alone. You're not alone, and there are like-minded people. There are communities out there who can help you. Just I like to push this point a lot. You are never alone. There will always be someone who cares about you, who loves
100%, yeah.
And I'm making myself emotional now.
No sobbing on the first episode. You gotta save that for like episode 3. You gotta bait the viewers in with the sobbing later on. But yeah, no, I think it's super important to let people know of like different resources out there and around you and stuff like that. And hey, I mean, self promo for this podcast, but we actually have a Discord server. You can check out our website, oneballbetweenus.card.co, I believe is the link. I will ensure that all the links are posted on the YouTube version of this podcast, because this will get edited onto YouTube. But on our Discord server, it's a very like open community that people are welcome to come in and be themselves. Like, I mean, we're going to be talking about topics that are definitely something that people will, what's the phrase, like you're probably going to feel upset about, because it's a very personal thing for yourself.
You're going to hit close to home.
Yeah, hit close to home, that's it, yeah. So our Discord's definitely a place where people are welcome to come in and just be yourselves, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to be ourselves and, you know, do our podcast, and hopefully if even one person listened to this podcast and thought, hey, those guys are pretty cool, I want to go chill out in their Discord server, I want to be a part of their community because they seem like open people, we've done our job. We've done our job at the end of the day as content creators. We've opened ourselves up and hopefully allowed people to realize that you do have people here. We're here to hopefully help you out on your journey, and no matter what they may be. Yes.
Give you a safe space no matter how bad your day is, and know that there are people there like you, people there who care.
Yes. You always have someone to care for you. You may not feel like it in the moment, because there are, as Cipher mentioned, dark times happening in the world, and IRL's a pretty scary place right now. Like, being a VTuber, it's definitely like an escape from IRL, and I think social media definitely, even if there's a lot of nasty stuff that gets put on social media, it's definitely an escape that a lot of people need, especially people of the LGBTQIA plus community. It's definitely a good escape, because you might not feel safe in person. You might not have like the resources around you that you need desperately, but always remember there's going to be people for you no matter what. If you don't have the resources in person, people have got you online, you know, and, you know, if you don't find anything online, but you might have people around you. It's just trying to find your personal networks that help you get through the day, really, and hopefully find what you're after, whether that's to do with sexuality or gender or political views or anything else like that. It, you know, you're always going to find your people, and just know that no matter what, you've got us in your corner. We'll be there for you, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is the goal of our community. We're trying to create an open, welcoming, safe community. I would like to stress that point. It's safe, where you are free from judgment or anything like that. No one will look at you differently because of who you are.
Yeah.
And that also brings me on to the point where I did reading before, and it's there's this stigma, right, on the dark web. That it's a place where criminals go and people go to do sell drugs, guns, hits, things like that. But there is also there's people also use it in countries where they are oppressed and where they're not allowed to be gay, where they're not where they have to be straight, and that where the only way that they can possibly get help or talk to people is through the dark web.
Oh, okay. I've not personally heard anything about that, but then again, I'm a little babby when it comes to the internet, and I don't explore a lot of like places like that, so I'm very innocent with a lot of things. Like, at most, I've browsed Reddit, and that's kind of it. I've never really looked into like things like the dark web. Like, maybe I've watched like YouTube videos and that, but I've never like actually looked into it myself or anything like that.
No,
but no, that's super interesting.
It was a whole documentary I was watching on it, and the fact that it's also used for things like that, it's just scary. It's scary that people have to go to that length to try and
that they have to rely on that, yeah.
Because they can't be free to be who they are. It just makes me very angry, and the fact of the matter is, you and myself, we're living in a first world country.
Yeah.
And it's an advanced country. It's a supposedly forward-thinking country. However, there are still people in this country and in the States, let's face it, in all first world countries, most likely, there are people there who feel like they cannot come out as who they are, as on the LGBTQA plus spectrum, that for fear of oppression, persecution, and things like that. And it's 2023. I thought we'd have been done with this. Why is it? Because people are scared of change?
I guess. I mean,
is it because are they scared that the birth rates or something are gonna drop? Are they scared that everyone's gonna turn out to be different? Or is it just because they're so set in these ways that don't rock the boat? Yeah. That's probably the best phrase. Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat. Yeah, but I think it's definitely like an interesting topic, because it's one of those things where it's like, the newest generation that's coming up are definitely going to be like one of the best generations in regards to acceptance. There are already kids that are accepting of people that are trans, that are accepting of people of different like sexualities and all that. You see a lot of stuff with like drag queens. There's a lot of events going on with drag queens where children are there and they don't care. At the end of the day, they just see a person who makes them happy. And I think it's definitely going to be one of those things where the generation that's coming up is definitely going to help in regards to helping get rid of these really old, nasty ways. But just going back on like a point that you mentioned about us being in like a first world country and a lot of that, it's definitely scary how in England it's supposed to be a country that is supposed to be like accepting and all this sort of stuff, yet I watched a video, I'm trying to think who it was by, I don't remember the name of the YouTuber because I'm really bad with, like, I think it was Philosophy Tube. I think she made a really, really good video on it. She's a trans creator, and it was about the NHS and people that are trans, like, trying to actually get in touch with the NHS and, like, talk about, like, their options and stuff like that. 2-year waiting list.
Oh my word.
2-year waiting list. And you wonder why a lot of the time people don't come out or say who they really are, or if they do, it's purely online and they've self-diagnosed. I say self-diagnose because, you know, a lot of the time people don't really have the resources around them to really explore who they are. So they will, you know, take into account what they've got around them. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people at a lot of places that don't have access to the healthcare and the health advice and just, you know, like physical health, mental health, all that sort of stuff. There's no access to it at all. So there is nothing wrong with self-diagnosing if that's what you can do, because at the end of the day, at this point, healthcare is a privilege, and that is disgusting. It should be a right.
It's a right.
Yeah.
When the fact of the matter is, you've got human rights organisations. Why don't they fight? Again, this is a whole different subject.
Yeah, it's okay.
Why don't they fight for healthcare?
Yeah.
Everyone should be entitled to healthcare.
Oh yeah.
Because if you can't afford it, you will die.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the unfortunate truth of the matter. But health shouldn't be a business.
No, we shouldn't have to put money on someone living. There shouldn't, like, I have like laughter in my voice because it's just so fucking absurd that people have decided that people needing to live has a fucking price tag on it. Like, I don't really tend to get angry about a lot of things, but the fact that there are people out there who are fucking dying because they can't afford to live is actually fucking disgusting. And I'm privileged enough to live in a country where our healthcare is free. I completely understand that. I know my privilege. And I think it's fucking disgusting that other places don't have that. And it baffles me. It really does baffle me. Like, it's so easy to be like, just come over here and stuff like that. But then again, at the end of the day, coming over here, as much as, yeah, healthcare is free, you're going to be on a long waiting list. And it's like, what, like, coming away from sexuality a little bit here, like, where's the line? You know, what? How do we solve, one, being able to make everything free for everyone, because that's a fucking right that should be there in the first place. But also, how do we make it so the wait times are so are shorter? Because 2 years to see someone because you're trans, like, that's fucking disgusting. Like,
yeah, no, that is exactly it. I mean, the argument that I've heard before is that we technically don't get free healthcare. It's part of our national insurance.
Of course,
however, because that comes out before you get paid, you don't notice it, and you're not paying it all the time. But honestly, to get with the 2-year wait for trans people and that, it's underfunding.
Yeah.
There's not enough staff, doctors, nurses, whatever, to go around. And let's face the fact, because people are now finally feeling like they are able to be who they are.
Yeah, they're
going to
discovering
start coming out more.
Yeah, of
which
course,
is going
absolutely.
to increase the number, which is going to increase the pressure on the NHS, on health services around the world, because they need these treatments to actually feel who they are as a person.
Yeah.
But if there's no funding in that, it'll just get to, which it already has with 2-year waiting list, a bottleneck. And then how long until it breaks? How long? And that is what scares me.
Yeah.
And I'm very passionate about fighting for the NHS, and the fact that the government before have tried to privatise it, and that it just disgusts me. But again, I'm moving away from the subject matter here.
That's okay. I think with these sort of podcasts, we're very much going to sort of like interlink topics, because a lot of them kind of go hand in hand, or, you know, you can sort of pluck one from the other type thing. So it's very much that we are focusing this podcast episode today on sexuality, but of course there's going to be little bits here and there that are going to include like other topics, and I mean that'll probably come up in other things as well. We're probably going to do our podcasts about mental health, physical health, and stuff like that, and sexuality will probably come into that too. It's just the way of how it is, really. And yeah, it's
well, that's how conversation works.
of course, yeah. It's not a very like just like sexuality. It's not a very linear thing, you know. So it's one of those things where things are gonna come in from other places, and this topic will end up in other topics, that sort of thing. So I think it's very much related together with sexuality. But like, I suppose coming back to the topic at hand, I guess, in a way, social media is very much a thing that has very much helped a lot of people out. It's also a thing that hinders a lot of people as well. Is there anything?
Sort of Damocles, basically.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, I suppose the thing. I
apologise for using that analogy.
No, how dare you be pulling out your teacher hat again? How dare you be smart on me like this with my small brain? But yeah, the thing that I was sort of like curious about, is there anything, because I noticed the time that we're about like 50 minutes now, so we got about a couple of minutes before we're going to wrap up our first ever episode, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would say to like your younger self about like how you are now as a person with regards to your sexuality that you'd like to tell them, per se?
Oh wow, that's wow.
Yeah, so it's a very deep question. I understand. Yeah.
God. Probably something. It would be something along the lines of, don't rush things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't jump into things because you think it's right. Just wait, and you will be happier eventually.
Yeah.
And you will find out who you are, and you don't jump into a relationship because you're getting affection. Go wait until you feel the actual attraction there.
Yeah. God, that's a big mood. I had a lot of relationships when I was younger that were I just jumped into them purely just because they were there, really, I guess. And this is a whole other topic as well to talk about at some point, but like slut culture and stuff like that. It was very much like a, you know, you're gonna jump on whatever bone gets thrown at you, like literally in this term, because it was guys. But
I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's very important to sort of realize that, like, you know, when you're younger and stuff like that, you're gonna have these feelings for people, and then you sort of look back and you're like, oh god, why? But then it's the growth as well. Like, I suppose those sort of experiences did help you sort of grow to who you are today.
Oh, of course. Of course. But, like, I'll put the question back to you. What would you say to your younger self?
Cool, putting me on the spot now.
It's unfair.
Oh, that's true. But I don't know, really. I think it's one of those things where sexuality was, again, like I say, I think my main thing was that I didn't really grow up around a lot of people that sort of talked about it. I kind of wish I looked into it more, like on social media and that. Like, I rather, like, sort of looked out for the sort of questions that I was wondering about, really. I wish I'd done it sooner. I think that's my main thing I would have said to my younger self, is that just go and explore and like look and like find the resources that you need, because like I say, at 26 I've only just found out that androsexuality is a thing, you know, and it's not something that's very well talked about. And I hope that from this podcast, obviously that we are both on the sexuality that is not really well talked about. Like, I'd say pansexual definitely is becoming more of a discussed sexuality, which is amazing. Yeah. That's absolutely fantastic. I just hope that from this podcast I can hopefully bring to people that androsexuals do exist. We're here. Hello. Hi.
Yeah. Quite.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing that I would definitely say to my younger self, like, hey, do the research, you know, do the research. Don't just rely on people around you, because a lot of them didn't talk about it. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic.
See, that's where again, that's where I was quite lucky.
Mm.
I've got a lot of family members who are gay, and so it was quite prevalent in my family. However, it was quite prevalent that my gay cousins were not disowned, but sort of ignored by their fathers was a big thing.
Oh, okay, that's a really big shame to hear. Like,
fortunately, it's got a lot better as they've gone older and opened their minds a bit. But it made it very hard for them growing up.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's definitely people at the moment who are struggling with that sort of thing, and you know, as we mentioned before, it's definitely worth finding the people that are supportive of you. If you haven't got family members who are able to support you, look for friends that can, or look for people online that you can trust and that sort of thing. I think it's really interesting that you say like you had like people in your family that are gay and in the LGBTQIA plus community and stuff like that. My family, at least like the older generation, like none of them all, but like younger generation, like one of my cousins who is like younger, like a lot younger than me, I think they are 15, 16, recently came out as pan as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely something that, for at least for my family side, it's definitely the younger generation that have, you know, sort of like discovered who they really were and stuff like that. And you know, whereas like the older generation, no, it's pretty much just straight. So I think it's definitely something that I kind of influenced me growing up, thinking that I was straight because everyone else around me was too. At least from my immediate family and friends. Like, we didn't really have anyone around who, at least at the time, didn't know. One of my closest friends, someone who used to be my absolute bestest friend through high school and even through primary school, like we grew up like really, really close. Sadly, we don't really talk much anymore because that's just the reality of it with high school and primary school. You become close with people because you're sort of like put together in this group, and then when you leave, you kind of realize you actually didn't really have that much in common. You were just kind of put together because of circumstances. They actually came out as gay, so
oh wow.
Yeah, so like they properly discovered who they were, and I think that's incredible. So
wonderful.
Yeah,
that is wonderful.
And like you know, like I don't talk to them much anymore, but I'm so happy for them, so proud of them, and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, and it took going to college to find that a lot of people were in the LGBTQIA plus community, and that's kind of where I mainly discovered it more, really. So it's there's definitely, I think nowadays, at least for the younger generation, a lot of people are very much hearing about everything and stuff like that. Whereas, you know, a while, like when we were in high school and stuff like that, it wasn't really talked about much other than, I don't know what yours was called, but ours was called like PCG or something like that, and it was basically like you had like an hour a week where basically someone would come in and do different topics like sexual health, drugs, and all that sort of stuff. And that was the only so that's the only time that we'd ever hear about it, is like an hour a week. That's it.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
I think that is a good place to wrap it up.
Just like how terrible the education system is. That's definitely a topic for another time.
I think we can all agree on that.
We can very much all agree on that. But yeah, no, that is our first ever episode of our podcast. I can't believe we're at the end. That's crazy. It's just been an absolute journey. Thank you all so much for listening. We are definitely going to be back next week. We are doing podcasts every Thursday at 8 p.m. BST, so make sure you check out the Twitch channel, Stubborn Zombie, and that's where we will be streaming our Twitch. You can also check out our YouTube as well. That'll be where the podcasts get posted once we have finished the podcast. But
I have to listen to myself.
Oh no, I don't worry, I'm going to be editing all of this down and we will be hearing the voices over and over and over and over again. But yeah, it's definitely going to be longer episodes from here on out. We're just doing a shorter one because we wanted to test the water, sort of see how the podcast would go. And I think confidently, I think we did a really good job with it. So it's definitely something that we will be doing in the future. So, but yeah, thank
definitely.
you all so much for listening. I hope you all had a great time, and we will be back next Thursday at 8 p.m. BST. Thank you all so much for listening, and have a great time. Bye!
Bye!